3 years, I never spoke to Yao. I thought it was a language barrier there. And then one game, he hit me with a Hakeem Olajuwon bing, bing, fadeaway. I said, hey, Yao, nice move. And he said, thanks, my brother. I said, whoa. You speak English? He's like, Shaq, you never talk to me. Of course I speak English.
While Yao Ming might have tricked Shaq, there have been players who entered the league not understanding or barely speaking the English language. Most of these guys started their careers in the NBA back in the 90s or early 2000s, when English wasn't as accessible for international players. But let's begin this list with a big man whose NBA career is still in its early stages, Alperen Sengun. The Rockets center from Turkey is probably the only player in recent years who has used a translator in his media interviews. That's right, this 20-year-old Turkish sensation started his NBA career speaking no English at all. Well, at least not in public. The Rockets PR team said no problem and assigned a translator to him right after the NBA draft.
What you'll bring to your new team?
Çok heyecanlıydım. Bugün her şey çok güzel geçti.
But the real question here should be, why was he wearing a Thunder hat in his first press conference? I guess the translator wasn't there for him when the trade was announced. Anyways, in his first year, Sengun struggled with the challenge of playing far away from home and adapting to the new culture. He did try taking English language lessons, but admitted that it's still easier for him to have someone who knows some Turkish by his side. Fast forward to the beginning of the 22-23 season, those lessons seem to be paying off.
I'm gonna talk English today. But sometimes you're gonna explain me.
Sengun even started incorporating some slang in his English.
What's up with you, baby? What's up with you?
Perhaps his biggest achievement came in the off-season of 2023, as he not only grew a couple of inches, but also did his first ever American podcast without any help.
My English getting good, huh?
It sure is, Alperen. Let's see if in his third season, the Turk will start trash-talking his opponents. The language barrier affected even the biggest stars. Now we know Nikola Jokic not only as the newly crowned NBA champion, Finals MVP and a two-time regular season MVP, but also as a funny guy on the mic. When he does bother to speak, of course. But when the Serbian first entered the league in 2015, he could barely speak or understand English.
Do you speak any English?
The Nuggets superstar had a solid rookie campaign, finishing third in the Rookie of the Year voting. But after the first season in the league, he admitted that the biggest challenge he faced was the language barrier. According to Jokic, it was particularly difficult to communicate with his teammates on defense. He said, "I knew what to say, but in the end I sounded like blah blah." Well, we don't have proof of this, but Jokic's interview in 2014 at the Nike Hoop Summit, just a couple of months before being drafted in the NBA, does sound a lot like blah blah.
I have to practice one of day, you know, and that is one half hour, you know, so something like that.
10 years later, the Joker is dominating both on the court and the post-game interviews with his hilarious responses.
I'm gonna ask the coach to give me a couple weeks more off, so I can be ready for the season. That's supposed to be a joke, and you didn't laugh. Good job, guys.
But even now, he still sometimes forgets English, especially after spending time in his home country speaking Serbian with his family and horses.
I think need a little bit of time to get back to speaking English, you know, and then maybe I can be vocal a little bit more.
Yep.
Let's move on from a future Hall of Famer to a current one. By now, Dirk Nowitzki has completely adapted to the US and probably speaks better English than some of the natives. However, he was only 20 when he played his first game in the NBA and, like the Joker, could barely speak or understand English. On one of his first road trips with the Mavericks in '98, Nowitzki asked somebody to explain the term shoot-around. His then teammate Gary Trent told him that shoot-around is like a rehearsal. The rookie nodded his head before looking back at Trent and asking what a rehearsal is. It didn't take long for Nowitzki to not only become one of the league's prolific scorers, but also one of the funnier English speakers.
This was born in the USA by the boss, Bruce Springsteen.
According to Steve Nash, who was with the Mavericks at the time, after 3 years in the league, Dirk's favorite phrases became "What's up, yo?" or "I'm just chilling." After 21 seasons in the league, the young and shy German went from mumbling English
Getting my own apartment was a big thing, and we'd practice twice a day during the practice camp, trainings camp, but then I had to get all my stuff that was pretty stressed out.
to having an almost perfect American accent.
I was hoisting enough shots to get to 30. Hold on, I gotta lean back. No, it was actually felt really good today.
Another European legend, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in 1996. Before coming to Cleveland, the big man from Lithuania had to look for the city on a map because he knew nothing about it. What Big Z brought to the US wasn't just great skill and size, but poor English skills too.
I'm very excited. I'm waiting for so many years, working hard, and finally I'm in the league. I can't tell in the words, it's so exciting.
Surprisingly, towards the end of his career, Ilgauskas said it wasn't really hard to learn the new language.
It was easy, I took some lessons back home, and when I came here, it was 14 years ago. Took me maybe 6 months to a year, but I picked it up little by little.
Well, if you say so, Big Z, but I can't ignore some of the comical stories his former teammates have told. For example, he didn't play in his rookie season due to injury and instead spent time learning English watching mafia movies. So you can guess what kind of language he picked up from The Godfather and Goodfellas, said former Cavs forward Dan Ferry. At the same time, Ilgauskas also started to pick up most of his English from the players around him. There's this story of how Ilgauskas was invited to dinner at teammates Bob Sura's house. Instead of reaching across the table for a bowl, Ilgauskas said, "Please pass the fucking mashed potatoes." That pretty much sums up what the Lithuanian learned from other NBA players. Another Cavs legend, Anderson Varejao, also had difficulties with the English language. He spoke Spanish and Portuguese, but when Varejao came to the NBA, he only knew a few English words. The Brazilian basketball player once admitted that he had trouble with phrases that had the same meaning but were expressed differently. So at first, being greeted with "what's going on" instead of "how are you" was challenging for the Brazilian.
The toughest thing for me was that I didn't speak any English, so it's a different culture.
Guess who took him under his wing? Big Z. When Varejao first arrived in Cleveland, Ilgauskas invited him to dinner. While bonding, Ilgauskas tried his best to speak Spanish and Varejao attempted to speak in English, but it wasn't really working. It wasn't until the two big men decided to order beer that things changed. I swear, by the time we got to 6 beers, he was fluent in Spanish and I was fluent in English, Varejao said in an interview in 2020. Safe to say that beer broke the ice when it came to the English language for Varejao. Throughout his career, he not only learned the language, but even started imitating different accents.
What's up, mate? I just want to ask you a couple questions about Australia this summer.
I don't know what it is with these international big men, but it seems like they struggle with the English language the most, at least in their first minutes within the league. Russian center Timofey Mozgov might have the best fake stat line in the history of the league, but when he signed with the Knicks in 2010, English language wasn't his friend. Before coming to the NBA, Mozgov spent his entire career playing in his home country. In the US, he tried having a tutor, but it was difficult to balance with practices and games, so the Russian tried to pick up the language naturally by being around his teammates and listening to them speak. During his time with the Knicks, Mozgov could contribute a solid 10-15 minutes on the floor, but he had a hard time answering the media's questions.
The fans here in New York are different than anywhere else. Have you experienced that yet?
What?
The fans in New York, have you experienced how different they are from other places? Have people shown you love?
Sorry, I don't understand.
The fans, like everybody, has anybody come up to you and the New York fans, have they been good to you?
I don't understand.
That's all right, next question.
Well, at least Mozgov knew what the word tutor meant. "What's that?" said Mehmet Okur, the Turkish player from the Utah Jazz, when he was asked if he had ever employed a tutor. This was a quote from a 2005 article in a Deseret News, which discussed the language barrier challenge faced by 4 international players on the Utah Jazz, including Okur, Andrei Kirilenko from Russia, Gordon Giricek from Croatia, and Raul Lopez from Spain. Kirilenko didn't need much verbal skill to block opponents' shots, but when he first joined the Jazz in 2001, he only knew a few English words and couldn't string them together in sentences. In his later years in the league, the Russian admitted that sometimes he still finds it difficult to express himself.
I'm not a really good talker. No, you know that. So sometimes I have a problem, and you have problems to understand what I'm talking about.
Okur, even without the help of a tutor, managed to learn English just by talking to his teammates. Although sometimes his interviews were still hard to understand.
I'm trying to get myself going with try to stay in the class and try to get myself going, and I was able to, grab some rebounds to show it, so I feel good right now.
Giricek had studied English as a kid, but it didn't help him much in the US. He struggled with when and which tense to use while speaking. But to be honest, that's a problem even for native speakers, isn't it? And good luck trying to find Lopez speaking English on the internet. Before the Spaniard's short career in the NBA even began, he was too scared to speak English at an introductory jazz conference in 2002, so an interpreter spoke for him instead. Last but not least on this list is the absolute European basketball legend from Croatia, Zan Tabak. You might be too young to remember this guy playing in the NBA, but he was one of the first Europeans in the league. He became a member of the Rockets in 1994 and won an NBA championship in his rookie year. Well, it was mostly thanks to Hakeem Olajuwon that Tabak won the ring, as the Croatian didn't play a single minute in the finals. But it's still impressive to win the trophy without even speaking English. 2 years ago, in an interview, Tabak admitted that he couldn't speak English during his first year in the NBA. He seems to be fine now, and his early challenges didn't stop him from having a great career. What do you think about this list? Did we leave anyone out? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to like the video and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.